Okay, so I saw this question bouncing around the internet the other day about comparing Legolas from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings to Amazon's terrible interpretation of Galadriel in Rings of Power. And how about I just call her Ropgal for short, so I don't have to say Rings of Power's and terrible interpretation of Galadriel every single time. So Ropgal versus Legolas. Why do people seem to like one and not like the other? So let's do a comparison, and I'm gonna run some video in the background here. I got some video compilation of Legolas doing cool stuff. We'll watch that while I talk. Okay, here we go. So our opening scene, we have the first big fight scene for both these characters is versus a giant troll. Legolas fights with the whole team, and he establishes his role as an agile archer. And why does he have all these cool agile powers and good archer skills? Because he's an elf, and that's apparently just what elves can do in this world. We have an established idea of elves and their elven powers involves in agility, and they're really good shots, and they have quick reflexes and heightened sensory perception. So if we have a set of powers, we know what we're dealing with. Legolas is the elf of the group, so he has these powers, others don't, but he still works with the team to take down the troll. He doesn't solve the plot, he doesn't save the day just because he's there. When he fights in a cool, more stylish fashion. Let's compare this fight scene to then Ropgal versus her ice troll. A bunch of elven soldiers are getting their asses kicked. She shows up, saves the day within seconds. Okay, so she has elven powers of agility, I guess, but also apparently super strength. And somehow she's way better than all the other elves. So what we've learned from Legolas' fight is that he's the agile guy who has unique style. What we've learned from Ropgal is that she's just way better than everybody. Problem is, we don't even know why she is, because everyone's elves in her fight scene. They're all elves, and they're all trained soldiers. We don't know why she's so much better than all the others. She just is. See, Aragorn, Boromir, and Gimli, they struggled against the troll because, well, they just don't have any superpowers, but they still tried to hold their own best they could, and they did all right. Meanwhile, in Rings of Power Land, a whole team of trained elven soldiers just can't stand a chance against this thing. So the effect that these two different scenes have is, on one side we learn that Legolas has a cool style, and the other side we learn that Ropgal is just way better than everybody. And as the story goes on, Legolas will continue to have cool action scenes, but he never solves the plot. He's basically a set piece, a cool background character that makes the action sequences fun to watch and helps establish the story as, this is a place where elves exist, and by the way, there's an elf here helping the team out. He's not just saving the day because he's a superhero. Where so far, after, by episode 6, 6 hours or so into the Rings of Power, Galadriel can solve every problem with violence. If violence can solve the problem, she will solve it with violence. And outside of combat, she still solves every problem just by basically demanding what she wants. And if she doesn't get it, she demands to talk to the manager until she does get it. And it works. So far, that works. But that's a separate part of the story. We'll get to that in a minute. Just from the action point of view, she basically just solves everything. There's nothing she cannot overcome. Like I say, if it's a physical conflict, she's just the best at it. So there's very few stakes. We don't even really see her dodge or even have to try. We're never given even a hint that she could get hurt. And, okay, there's a main character syndrome, and you could argue that, well, Legolas is an action hero, and you didn't expect him to get hurt. But within the context of the story, we get this idea that he could get hurt. He acts like he has to dodge. Galadriel barely, she stands there staring as a volcano erupts in her face. Apparently, she's not afraid of anything. If the character themselves has no fear of death, or even pain or injury or being hurt, and the show so far doesn't show us any sign they can be. It's like there's not much stakes there. I mean, Legolas, yeah, we understand from audience point of view, he's a main character and is probably not going to die, but he acts like he has to dodge sometimes, like he's trying, anyway. And then this idea of ramping stakes. Legolas fights with the team to take on a troll in his first big action scene. And as the story goes on, we see him do more and more cool tricks and techniques, and then he has a big final climactic scene where he takes on this giant elephant thing with armed soldiers riding on its back, and he does it all by himself. But we see how he does it. He does it through a process. He climbing up the side and shooting arrows and cutting a rope, and he does it all flashy. But this is a build-up after 3 very long movies of him going through all this combat and action, and we see him getting bigger moments, so he has this big moment. And even then, he doesn't solve the plot. This is just a cool action scene. It's not, have no fear, for Legolas is here, this day is saved. No, he just helped we see him have a cool fight scene, and that's it. And what happens right after that fight scene? Gimli says to him, that still only counts as 1. They make a joke out of it, and they move on. Which, by the way, speaking of Gimli beat Legolas in their little body count contest in the Battle of Helm's Deep. So Legolas, despite all of his cool flashiness, is not just so much better than everyone else. He's just fun to watch. And again, we see this ramping stakes, going bigger fights as the thing goes on. Compare that to Ropgal. Well, her opening scene is taking out this big old troll. Wow, badass superhero. She took down the troll really quickly. Cool, okay. What's her next big fight scene? She subdues a bunch of guards who did not have their swords drawn and weren't trying to attack her. She basically just, they thought she was a prisoner, and she breaks out and pushes them all into the cell, and okay, that's still a fine, impressive fight, I guess. We'll not talk about the choreography, but, fine. But it's much lower stakes than a giant troll that was beating the crap out of a whole team of elven warriors. And then what's her next fight scene after that? She's picking on rookies, trainees who don't know how to fight. And even the captain knows, even though he's never seen her fight, somehow he already knows she's so damn good that no one can touch her, that they have a training session with real swords, and he says, well, if anyone can even scratch her, you'll get to be a lieutenant, because he knows it's going to be so hard for them to even touch her. So before a fight even starts, we know there's no tension here. We've seen her defeat trolls, we've seen her take on, well-trained soldiers, and now she's smugly, literally smirking as she just shows off in front of a bunch of rookies. You see the problem here. The stakes keep getting lower every fight scene. After we have already established she's super awesome, we then see her basically pick on people we know are weaker than her. Are we supposed to be, cheering for her? I mean, what are we supposed to be thinking from an audience point of view? We get it already. She's better than everybody, and now she's just acting smug about it. And then finally, by episode 6, we see her get to fight orcs. Orcs who are, usually the baseline, lower-level threat in this whole world of Lord of the Rings and all this. So, yay, no one was surprised that she could defeat an orc. And, of course, she does it in a successfully showy fashion. The question is why? Why was she swinging off of saddles to chop up orcs? I don't know. And she even ends... In the show, she gets an audience of people stopping to stare at her and go, oh, wow. It's just they're in awe of watching her fight. And one of those people staring at her in awe is another elf. A guy who's supposed to have similar powers that she has, and certainly should have seen other elven warriors do awesome tricks before, and he's still just in stunned silence of, oh, wow, look at her go. And she's defeating orcs. Why is that? This is supposed to be impressive. I mean, see, they're going the wrong direction here in how you, even just from an action hero point of view, you ramp up to be more and more cool things, and they're ramping down to less impressive until they finally get to their big action sequence of the series, at least of the series so far, and oh wow, we're supposed to be so impressed of her defeating orcs that even the other characters are stopping and all. It's just, from just a movie production, writing, storytelling point of view, the use of her action powers are just not impressive. They went the wrong direction. We don't see her. They're not drawing us in to like her. They're just showing off, overkill. And fine, you can have super overpowered characters and still make them interesting, but it's just, we would go from wow, she can take on a troll, to wow, she can beat up rookies, to Oh, look, she can defeat an orc. Okay. You want to see how to make a superpowered character still fun to watch? Go watch One Punch Man. Go find that anime. You ever heard that anime, One Punch Man? The guy's so powerful he can defeat everyone with a single punch. But it's also a comedy. It's supposed to be a joke, because that's what happens when characters are too powerful. It's hard to take them seriously. Anyway, and the big killer, though, the final nail in the coffin of why Ropgal is unlikable, but Legolas is a fun fan favorite, is because outside of combat, what is Legolas? Well, he's a side character. He doesn't actually get a whole lot of screen time. But he has a subplot with Gimli where, at first, him and Gimli don't like each other, and by the end of the show, we see they become friends. And outside of that, we don't get to see Legolas a lot, but he otherwise seems to be a decent, nice guy. Galadriel, being the main character, has a lot more focus on her. And she acts terrible. She's mean to everybody. She's rude to everybody. She's smug all the damn time. She's not likable in general. When someone's likable, we want to cheer them on. When someone acts like an insufferable bitch, we don't care anymore. Watching someone who's already got a bad attitude act smug as they beat people up, not impressed. Watching somebody who is maybe an underdog, or who we didn't think could do it, or has to struggle, that's more impressive. Or in case of Legolas, he's never really portrayed as an underdog, but he's at least he's neutral at least. He's not offending anybody. He's kind of a fun side character who over time learns to be friends with the dwarf, and that's it. You can get on board of cheering for someone like that. Galadriel hasn't even given us reason to like her outside of action, and she clearly doesn't need any help in the fight scene, so that doesn't draw people in. So there you go. I mean, I could keep rambling on this about for hours, going in circles for a while, but hopefully I've made my point here. The way they betrayed Legolas as an action character draws us in to enjoy the ride as he does more and more cool things as the show goes on, and the plot of the story never hinges upon him. He doesn't steal the wind from the sails of the plot by being so cool. He's cool, it's great, it's fun to watch, but the plot still, the plot still functions. There's still tension, there's still stakes. Meanwhile, Ropgal, there's no tension, there's no drama. We get less and less intense fight scenes every time. Until finally, even when she defeats Adar, the first real villain character we have in the story, she just takes him down barely without a fight. Because he basically runs away, and there's not even a fight there. It's just like, the stakes keep lowering. And then, of course, outside of fight, she's just unlikable. So there you go. But also, there's not much more to say about that.